All right,
We're live. We're
let's
here.
do it.
Here we
What's
are
up,
with
Ryan?
Ryan.
Hey guys, how are you doing? Thanks so much for having me today.
Oh, we're excited to have you, man. Excited for you to be here. Happy Thursday. I realized on our last few episodes that we had utterly failed to introduce our guests at the top of our episodes. And for those of you who are joining live, we're really excited to have Ryan Fitzgerald, head of marketing at Belay Solutions, with us today. Off camera, Ryan's a good friend and fellow creative collaborator in the Atlanta area, and super thrilled to have him with us today. And Ryan, why don't you just give us a quick intro, and then we can dive into our questions and conversation for today.
Yeah, as you said, I'm Ryan. I live on the east side of Atlanta in Decatur. We are very proud of our own little town inside the perimeter here. For the last 4 years, I've had the opportunity to work at Belay. We do virtual staffing, virtual assistants, accounting services, and marketing assistance, and fully remote, fractional, and support people that way. For the 15 years before that, I worked in like a live production environment, leading creative teams, creating experiences weekly. And that was a pretty different experience than I've had now, but I realize all that stuff kind of builds, just like in all of our careers, right? That just build on top of each other. In addition to that, I'm a dad. I got 2 boys, and they're awesome, and they're both super creative, and so we're just always having a blast, blast in our house. But no, I feel like creative work, and especially living in Atlanta, I plug it a lot. Everybody's like, don't move here, but if you are creative, please move here. It's a fantastic place to be. You would love it. So I think it's a great place, and so thrilled that I got to meet you, Nate, here.
Yeah, man. Well, and if you ask people if I live in Atlanta, they'd say no because they live outside the perimeter. I basically live in South Carolina for most people that live in Atlanta. But yeah, man, we're so stoked to have you on the show, and I've always been really inspired because I think that you are doing some stuff really, really uniquely with Belay and just how you've approached building the creative and marketing muscle there over the last few years. I think I'd love to jump in first around something that became a hot topic during the pandemic, but also is something that I think people have wrestled with, which is whether you've got a hybrid environment where you've got multiple locations and people are also working remotely, or you're exclusively remote like Belay. How have you navigated that remote world with building a team, building culture, and being able to remain consistent in kind of your vision, fully distributed?
Yeah. So, I mean, the first part of my career was spent leading creative teams all in person. And I would have told you that, like, oh man, the specialty I bring to the table is my ability to kind of translate from the kind of logistics and business side of leadership and the creative piece and kind of bring people together in a way that they are galvanized and they're moving forward. And obviously during the pandemic, we all were forced to figure that out. And going from live production, I essentially became a TV producer for a couple years, which was a ton of fun. But we also had to learn how to do that. But you still got to be together in person when you're shooting or whatever it might be. And then when I moved into this role at Belay, it was 100% remote. Majority of our team does live in Atlanta, but I realized immediately that all the skill sets that I had, they actually were kind of cheapened and I realized pretty quickly that, like, while I love managing people, it's actually a thing I really love, especially quirky creatives. Like, I feel like I know how to get the best out of them and create places where they feel really safe. But when all of a sudden you move online, all of those tricks that I built over 15 years, they no longer work. There was no like go be silly in their office. There was no, hey, we're gonna kick it for the afternoon. Let's all go grab a drink or go get ice cream or whatever it might be. You can't do any of those tricks because so much about managing creatives is just like measuring the temperature, right? And
Yep.
understanding when they typically are a little manic in their emotions. I'm a little manic in my emotions, and understanding like, oh gosh, you know what they need? They need like the kind of a pump up here or whatever it might be. And so, obviously when I started, Slack and some of these kind of collaborative tools were still not fully adopted, and especially in like smaller and medium-sized businesses. And so, and especially not outside of the creative space. And so one of the first things that I realized I had to do is I had to create really quick, real-time collaborative tools for our team to use. And so I created a space where we did that. And then at the same time, I had to create really protected environments for them as well.
Mm.
And so, you know, we kind of created a closed channel on Slack, and this is so tactical, I understand, but like a closed channel on Slack that was for creative review. And, you know, our CRO or our CEO was asking if they could be there, and I'm like, no, you're not allowed to be in there. And actually, as I've kind of moved up in the organization, I've started to pull out as well, because I understand how important it is for that space to be safe for them. And now that I'm kind of the head of marketing, there's like 2 or 3 levels between me and the creatives that I brought into the organization. When I started, we didn't have an in-house agency, and kind of the first job I did was develop an in-house agency. And then from there, I've kind of moved into the performance marketing piece, and now it all kind of reports to me. But with that, I recognized safety was really important. Real-time collaboration was really important. And then the third was just like recognizing that our in-person time was more important than it ever was.
Yeah.
And so finding 2 to 3 times a year where I could connect with those leaders in person, create space. And, you know, so much about being in a business environment, especially when you're on the in-house side, is, you know, productivity. What do you get done? I get back, I have to report. You know, the CEO is like, what the heck were y'all doing in person? What business did you get done? And I'm like, we got the business done of getting the business done, which is we all have to trust each other and like each other. And so figuring out ways to balance that was important. One story that comes to mind was I hired a new pretty quickly after I started. I hired a new designer. It was, you know, first few hires I made, I knew there were people I knew that wanted to come with me, and this was an outside hire, and he was amazing. He was a really, really remarkable designer, but I could tell he did not feel safe, and I just like kind of got to the point where I was like, this is either not going to work, and we're gonna have to make a change, which I hate to do, especially for these kind of younger creatives in their career. I want to find opportunities for them to get long stints of work, because I feel like that's really important in development. You know, when you bounce from place to place, you might have a great portfolio, but you don't know how to work with people.
Yeah.
And we all know great designers who don't get any work, right? Because they have never figured that piece out. And so I drove all the way across Atlanta, and I took him to get a beer. And I just realized in that moment that he had never worked in a place that was safe. And no matter what we did virtually to try to create that, you know, create a space where he felt safe. And I kind of just had to sit him down. He said, I really thought you were coming to fire me today. I said, I'm here today to try to get you to lean in and thrive. And that was the day that everything turned around for him. Like the next day he showed up to work totally different. And so I found that, you know, remote work is totally possible, but I know so many of us learn through that period of time that it's actually the time that we then come together, where whether it's, you know, 4 times a year, 1 time a year, being really, really strategic to build trust. Because I really do think creative work, it moves at the speed of trust. And we all say that, business, leadership, all those things, but we all know that it's extra specific in the context of building a creative team. How have y'all go ahead, Greg.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask, I feel like y'all, you know, you were centralized, right? And where y'all work, and then you kind of moved dispersed over the pandemic, and then somewhat in a hybrid situation now. Is that right? Or like, how have y'all navigated that?
Yeah, I mean, similar. I feel like we've gone through that journey too, and have had the times of through COVID trying to figure out what's the right cadence of people coming together, creating, you know, unique experiences for people to come together, being together on client work. And I feel like we've gotten all flavors of it. And I feel like right now we're in a really great place of we have enough in-person time, or we're starting to build in-person time where we're really building relationship with each other, and creating that trust that like creates that flywheel for creativity. And then also, you know, people are able to also have lives and be humans, and go pick up their kids, and you know, do the things that they want to do. And I think it's, you know, it's the blessing of the last 5 years, is being able to figure that out, and having to, you know, the opportunity to experiment. And even, you know, sitting here, although we are wearing opposite hats.
We swapped hats today, but
Nate is wearing the San Diego hat and I'm wearing the Atlanta hat. But like, even the benefit of like us, like we're as close as we've ever been as partners, but Nate is living, you know, across the US in Atlanta, and we make time for each other. We still see each other plenty in person, and you know, hoping that, you know, that's definitely critical to be able to scale the business. But, you know, wouldn't have been possible, or we probably wouldn't have even thought to do it before COVID.
Yeah. Shout out Delta Airlines. No, I couldn't agree more. I think with you both. I love, Ryan, what you said about trust, because couldn't agree more that that's often the, we always say, it's like we had a friend that used to say, a woman named Wendy we met years, probably 10 plus years ago at Microsoft, that would say, for teams to be successful, you need trust, collaboration, and shared purpose, and the ability for like those things to like you kind of need all of them. Like collaboration really being built on clear communication, and shared purpose. Like you have to know that you're all driving towards something. And I think that often, especially with creative teams, to your point, if you lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish, and you're doing it in a remote environment, that can feel really damning. Like for most people, it can just be like, that's no man's land. You don't want to end up there. But that's also, I think, the biggest villain in what you have to fight in remote is that like having acute clarity around that, and then simultaneously being able to sustain that clarity in the midst of, in our world as an agency, a total, a myriad of client priorities, myriad, like ever-changing landscape, like all the different pieces that can play into that. But I couldn't agree more. I think if you focus on a culture of trust and safety and creating space for that, which I'll be the first to admit, I think we've done well at times and done really poorly at times. I think that's when we've seen it work the best, is when we've prioritized our people and been intentional about that, and not any other version of that.
I think it's so hard for managers and leaders, other C-suite folks to understand that creative teams very rarely have duplicate roles. Like everybody has a unique contribution. And so managing a team of individual contributors that have, varying skill sets is way harder than just, I have 12 account managers and they all do the same job, and we run through the 7 questions in our one-on-ones and all of those things.
Yeah.
And so like the capacity to manage is way of the number of people that you can kind of manage and lead well, galvanize, it shrinks. And so making sure that you build out those kind of culture carriers for you within the team. One of the tools that we have used is Working Genius. It's a personality profile thing from Patrick Lencioni.
Yep.
If he wants to sponsor this, we should reach out to him. But
yeah,
I'm in. I will tell you, like,
what's up, Pat?
Hey, Pat, just you're back, I heard. So come on.
Yeah, you're back. You're back. Come on.
You're back. I will say though, but I literally keep this on my desk. Like I have it
Love
right here.
it.
It has my entire team of what their geniuses are and their frustrations. And so at any moment when I know, like you're in a meeting and you've had these, especially in remote, it just starts feeling weird.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh gosh, because it's double bad to a team culture, especially in creative work. If you're on a meeting and people hate it. One of the things we do is we force cameras on always. Like you can't have cameras off. I think so many folks do that other places, but it allows people to check out. I think it's really important. But for us, using this tool, and we'll spend probably once a quarter, we'll spend one of our team meetings just going over this in a new level. If we have new people on, new people out, because folks will leave meetings frustrated, because I really have a lot of people on the top end, the kind of invention and the wonder side, and then have a lot of people in the like enablement and tenacity side. And if you are like am I allowed to curse on this? Give it all the get shit done people down here in a meeting where you're just like, what if we do this? What if we do this? Send pizzas to everyone,
Right.
And I think that all of a sudden they're just like so frustrated, but all of a sudden you can enter meetings and you go, hey, this is a wonder and invention meeting, or this is an enablement and tenacity. Yeah, it's been a game changer for us, especially remote, because you just lose that trust so fast, right? Like it's so hard to fill the gap with trust instead of like suspecting that they're out for their own agenda or whatever it might be. And this tool for us has been really, really helpful, especially in the remote setting, but to orchestrate our team from start to finish when you like have an idea, a big project or whatever it might be. In the context of like digital performance marketing, where we have no office, we really have no like print or like live collateral. There's no storefront, there's no hotel bar, there's no, new brand identity that's, plastered anywhere. It's just we made the new ad sets and we're trusting they're running somewhere, but we don't get to see them because we're suppressed from the group.
Right.
We don't want to waste money on ourselves.
Yeah, your IP addresses are blocked. Right.
Yeah. I think tying people back to that purpose, as you talked about, is so important. Celebrating the wins along the way. We had one of our best months ever a few months ago. And literally, then we got together in person a few weeks later, and just happened to kind of line up that way. And I made buttons for everybody that said Belay had its best lead month ever, and all I got was this stupid button. And it's just kind of like a funny, like, I knew my CEO may not love that because it's a little snarky, but I knew that the people on our team, you're working with these, they've got
Yeah.
dark personalities, dark humor often. And I knew that they would appreciate the kind of the snarkiness, and it really did. It was just kind of like a shot in the arm for them. And then, just like everybody, we entered a couple months where the market's super volatile, consumer sentiment's down, and it's harder than ever to be a
Yep.
marketer because all of your front end signals show that you're doing great, but all your back end signals are like, nobody wants to give you money, so what are you going to do?
Right.
And I think having those moments when you have them kind of sustain you through those next seasons.
Yeah, and that builds the camaraderie, right? You build when it's a team sport. We like to use a river raft analogy of like with our mission of guiding brands onward at Grizzly, and it's like everybody has to row. And I think that those, like, what makes you want to row? Well, when you feel like you're actually in a boat with people that also want to be in the boat with you and also want to row. Like, if everybody wants to row, it's all of a sudden a lot easier to keep going than if you're like, are we just transacting? Which again, the like transaction is the villain often of in remote, is like, if you're just transacting, like you could push any type of widget at that point, which again, for with the collective superpower of all of our responsibilities is creativity and solving problems via creativity, and using that in our marketing strategies. And you can only do that if people are aligned and energized by what they're doing. I love that.
That's another kind of area that reminds me from like leading remote teams. I've found that dead weight is heavier on a remote team than it is in person, because
Yeah.
most humans, like most other humans, just in general, like when you can find a way to like most people. Some people aren't that way, which I don't encourage you to have them on your team. But I think, but when you're remote, it's easy for a player to kind of sit back and not be seen. And I think as a leader, you've got two options there. One, you have to see like, hey, are they actually contributing and nobody's seeing that? Or are they not contributing and everybody's getting, and it's starting to create some kind of frustration on the team. And it really does demoralize so many folks.
Yeah.
So I have found that like you got to move pretty swiftly to kind of make changes when those happen. But I've actually found more times than not, it's a personality thing where they're actually contributing meaningfully. They're just not great at internal marketing. They're not great at showing people. And unfortunately, you have to be a little braggadocious, in a virtual environment to make sure other people know what's happening. But as a leader, you can pave the way for that so it can be done in humility, where you like call people out. We had a meeting today where it literally was just kind of around the horn. Everybody talked about your 2-3 biggest projects. And it allowed folks to recognize, oh yeah, I've just been waiting on that person to get that landing page done for me for 3 weeks, and I don't understand why they haven't done it yet. And now all of a sudden I realize, oh no, they're doing something way more important than that,
Right.
because it's going to make have all this ROI later, or whatever it might be. And they just don't naturally see that, especially as those teams scale. If you have a great project manager, often the people don't know what other people are doing because they're well managed. And I think that's a thing we've bumped into quite a bit.
I love what you said about how, as a leader, you have to kind of manage like such a diverse set of personalities and be able to get the best out of them. I also think about some of our clients who are CMOs leading global organizations, and they're not only managing maybe the in-house creative team, but they're managing all of their SDRs and their product managers and product marketers and event teams, field marketing. And so it becomes this like, not only that, but you're also managing so many different aspects of the business, different types of
Yeah.
work. I would love to hear your thoughts on kind of, as a marketing leader, having to pull all of those levers and like keep them in check, and how you think about that.
Yeah, gosh. I feel like I've been through the ringer on that one. When I started, we kind of had our own direct line, and marketing was its own standalone vertical. Over the last 2 years, we've integrated with revenues in the same way that so many kind of in-house marketing teams have, where like you kind of have all of the rev ops all together, pushing on that flywheel, which I think has been fantastic for us. But at the same time, if you draw that, I guess one other thing to say, we're also owned by private equity, and I think that is a whole other impact to marketing. It makes marketing, forces you to be way more effective. and efficient, but it also handicaps you in some areas. And that's just like the reality where it's like, gosh, if you can't prove, opportunity lost is not a motivator, it's proven return. And so it just like changes the game a little bit. And so the biggest place I felt the tension for that is even like competing metrics downstream, like it's pretty easy for our designers to understand that they made an ad set and it got a certain number of impressions or something like that. But ultimately, if new revenue is the driving factor of really anything we're doing, especially because we're kind of fully performance demand gen in-house or inbound marketing. And so we really are driving top, middle, and bottom of the funnel in all ways on this marketing side.
Mm-hmm.
That I had to find ways to tie the entire team to the goal and it not feel forced, but also had to find ways where they felt kind of attached to the work they were doing. And so like one of the ways that I have shown them that was to show how that when we do work and we tie it to results, like when we can show the results that, hey, I designed this way versus I designed this way. I A/B tested this image versus this image. And as a designer, I didn't just check the box in Asana, get the little flying cat or whatever, and then and then going to is it a unicorn? I don't remember what it is. But I used to be in Asana a lot more than I am now.
Yeah. I did love the
Um,
flying whatever it was. I remember that.
Yeah, it was great, right? It had a little rainbow thing. It was fantastic. But I helped them understand like, hey, the more you can tie your work and your effort and your discernment, because that's what we hire creatives for, right? Like anybody you can learn, hierarchy of information. You can learn like the color palettes and theory and all those things. But like the things that make great designers, especially in-house, I've found is like, they have great discernment, right? They know, they kind of understand naturally. And I know
mm-hmm.
like Daniel on our team, who's like just a world-class designer. He's making decisions every day to improve conversion, but nobody knows these kind of like micro decisions that he's making along the way. And so, challenging him, hey, show the results, like partner
Yeah.
with our, paid ads manager to A/B test some stuff and pull the data back and like help me see, so then I can help the board see, or the C-suite or whoever it might be, see like the impact that your work has done. And so I kind of just have to keep harping on like, hey, results centered. Like how do you how do we tell a story that's driven by results? And it doesn't just have to be, look that this graphic got revenue. Is that I made the decision that I flipped the gradient and all of a sudden it performed better on social organically, or it performed better paid, or whatever it might be. And all of those just kind of smaller things, how do you draw it back to the how do you show results? I have it written on I kind of give a big pep talk about this today. And and so I do think that was a big part of it, was like drawing it back. And then the other piece I was able to do to encourage that behavior along the lines was to go, hey, because we have done such a great job showing results in every kind of step in the funnel, creating visibility into our metrics for our owners or whoever it might be, that has bought us more trust. And I'm able to show them examples of, hey, because we have been more proactive in this area, this area, this area. We've told this story well, this story well, this story well. We've done good internal marketing. Because of that, now this amount of our budget, we are able to kind of have a little more looser reins on, and we can make better decisions. Or I was able to go get you this tool or whatever it might be, that shows like a reward. What's rewarded is repeated. And so I'm really trying to figure out at any point, like I recognize that showing results is the best way for us to be able to do more of the marketing we know is effective. And if I can tie that back to something that makes their life better at every stage, I have found that they'll lean in and they'll buy in more, and then they feel more connected to the revenue team as a whole. But I will tell you, I really think the first 2 years of building that in-house agency, I didn't get that yet. And I also, that was a kind of a period of time. I really feel like we're kind of in the middle of that full swing of marketing really being part of revenue, or I prefer maybe sales being part of marketing. But anyways, we can talk about that later. I think everybody has an opinion on that depending on what direction they came from, right? But I do think that as I've seen that shift, I recognize there are ways to lead creative teams and to lead marketers who just want, Ben Chestnut said this at the very first creative mornings I went to. He said, people just want to make cool shit and see people use it. And I literally wrote that down, and it's like my life kind of motto now. It's like, oh, that's really all I want to do, is I want to make cool shit and I want to see people use it. And I know that that's the case for all of the people we hire too. So how do you connect the dots for them? And I'm just realizing as a leader, my job is more and more to connect the dots and less to, be the creative director that I used to be and I love to be. Like I'm having to let go of a lot of the things. We've hired people who are actually better at it than me at this point. And while that's painful because it's so much more fun than like spreadsheets and decks, it's just it really does. I see them come alive, and then I get out of the way. And the more I don't get out of the way, the worse the work is, and the worse their ability to engage is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I feel like we're all all forever chasing that feeling of making impact with our work, right?
Yeah.
Like, as a transformation agency, like how can we create work that actually has impact and transforms the brands we're working with? And then all of us on the team, like, what is our part in that? What little role did I play in creating change or moving something forward?
I think for our team as well, as I've hired more and more brilliant folks, the tension with brilliant folks is they're really bad at something too. If they're really good at something, it means they're really bad at something. And often it's like productivity or focus or deadlines or whatever those things might be. And one of the things that I have found for them too is like, hey, I need to find time to give them passion projects too. I just in the last week we've
Mm-hmm.
kind of reorganized a couple different things from a workload, because I could tell one of our sharpest creatives, they wanted to own a project that was a little out of their scope typically, but I recognized that actually on the team they were the absolute best person to do that. And so how can we move the chess pieces around to allow them to do that? Because ultimately leading creatives is like helping them find that energy and then just tapping into it the best you can. I think so many times I've tried
Mm-hmm.
to raise the sail when the wind wasn't blowing, and then other times when the wind is blowing, I lower it because we don't want to go in that direction. And I think the times we've been successful, the times where I could figure out how to raise the sail at the time the wind was blowing, and that might not be what I had on the roadmap. It may not be what the Q2 priority was, but being flexible enough to switch Q2 and Q3 because you see the energy is there. And if you can that's like one of those examples that I've tried to show my team that like, hey, because we have worked so hard to create transparency throughout our metrics and our funnel for all these folks who are looking in, we have permission to do that sometimes. I can go back and go, hey, we actually
Mm-hmm.
shifted these priorities, and I recognize it was because I was able to serve our team really well, which we got more and better work out of them.
Yeah.
And I think that those are the places where I can even show them like, hey, you're contributing meaningfully because of that. And then they want to do more. They want to show the results or whatever it might be.
Love it.
I love that. And I love that analogy. And I feel like if you had a Read AI version of this meeting, the recap might be like lots of sailing and rowing analogies abound.
I love
Nate's the one that has the actual ship
Yeah.
tattoo, so
I love
he can claim it.
I think.
Sorry, Nate, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead. No, go ahead, Ryan.
Belay is a rock climbing term, and so
Yeah,
I typically find myself in the climbing side. It's funny when you said Delta a little while ago. I want to be climb higher, just because anything that has the word climb in it, I'm like all in.
That's awesome.
Great ad work.
That's awesome. Yeah, Ryan, I think something tied to that I've always been impressed by is your willingness to. I think Belay's done a really interesting job of trying a lot of obviously do a lot of digital work, but you also you've tried a lot of different channel tactics and strategies. And I know that's probably happened where you may not have had budgets that you've wanted, or that you've been able to do a lot with a little or a lot with what you had, right? So I'm just curious, like how you've navigated that, because to the point of even the landscape of marketing right now, that can be part of the tension. Is there has been kind of an interesting moment where you're right, you're getting a lot of signals on the front end, but when it comes to actually closing revenue, it's gotten a little bit more interesting. How have you navigated that? How do you navigate it with your team, and also just with the conversations that you're having up the chain too? As it relates to kind of taking swings at the right budgets at the right times, et cetera.
Yeah, I feel like it's so much about making sure your mix is hedged well. I feel like it's often in the same way that you manage your retirement accounts, which I don't suggest you look at currently. But the I think it's like understanding the kind of risk tolerance, and for me, I understood as our kind of as the economic climate has changed over the last few years, that the risk tolerances have kind of moved up and down. And so part of that is like being flexible, understanding when you can strike when the iron is hot, also understanding like, hey, I like for us, one thing I really believe that like content marketing via YouTube was a huge opportunity for us,
Yeah.
and it was something that we had not invested in until this year, and we're actually just kind of getting started with it. And there were a couple of things inside our organization that made sense that it was the right time. We had a podcast several years ago. We had sunset it, when in kind of the first round of kind of economic volatility 2 or 3 years ago, and then you know looking at this time is like, oh, well, AI is really pulling a lot of information out of YouTube. I can kind of pitch it from that way. I can understand that the value it's going to add, understand like our owners, the industry, all of those kind of keywords, things that you just use in pitches that from an agency side, like, oh, this is the hook for them because they care about it, when in fact you understand that this over here is the greatest value, but this is the felt need.
Yeah.
And so I think a big part of that is like understanding those moments and finding the moment to do that. I think the other piece for us was I just I believed, how do I, so obviously CTAs and just like getting in like performance marketing, just get the contact, move them into the funnel, and then push them down the funnel through email and whatever else, whatever resource you have along the way is like the end game. And I feel like for so long, content marketing was so much more about just like the thumbnail, so much more about like how do we get their contact, and then we don't really care. Like, okay, great, the whole resource can be
We'll
generated
blast
by
them.
AI.
Yeah. Right. Right.
Like, especially
Right.
now,
Hmm.
anybody can make a white paper, anybody can make a 20-page document or whatever it might be.
Right.
I really challenged our team that is like, hey, no, it needs to be worth downloading. And I just still believe that quality work matters, and
Mhm.
AI can help us do more of it, like it totally can. But for us, it was like, how do we more effectively create stuff that can be used across the life cycle of a customer? And so, for instance, we spent the last 3 weeks kind of fully pivoting all of our creative top to bottom, because obviously the economic moment had
Hmm.
changed pretty significantly. We have kind of signals that show that our lead volume is directly tied to market performance. Like the 48 hours after a good day, our lead volume's up. 48 hours after a bad day, our lead volume's down. And over the last 2 years, I can pretty much show you exactly. So I have it open on that screen right there, and it determines how my mood is for the day. But with that, we recognized, there was that Sunday where everybody's freaking out about what was going to happen on Monday and all of those things. And so our team pulled together and we were like, hey, every bit of creative we have needs to be refreshed or just contextualized.
Mhm.
And so in that moment, I saw the team kind of jump in and figure out, hey, let's do this. Let's take these resources we have that are high performing for us. Let's pivot them and give them new titles, adjust the content. I'm not often in the approval chain on some of those things, but I wanted to be involved in some of that, and I saw some of it, and I was like, hey, I want you to think about it this way. How would this be helpful to a current customer, not just a future customer? Because if it's helpful to a current customer, it will be helpful to everyone that wants to enter our funnel as well. And so it was just like another chance for our team to remember, hey, everything we create. And so everything we create needs to be helpful to any type
Yeah.
of audience. And if we can do that, and there actually is quality there, it will improve conversion, but it also just creates value long term.
Yeah.
And if you're creating a premier brand, a luxury brand, Belay is kind of at the top of the market on the virtual staffing space. We're all US based, dedicated people. We have a huge pool of contractors, over 2,000 folks who can serve clients. So no matter what you need, we have the person. They're highly vetted, all those pieces. And so like we're able to position very premium because of that. But we were able to then create core content, just like the pillar strategy, core content, and then it became the engine, and everything else got versioned out. And so we've been really aggressive, even on social and things like that, kind of bucking the norm a little bit, where we put out pretty like aggressive content heavy text carousels. Oh man, my southern accent came out there. But I think that really finding ways that content that we know is performing well, we're just putting it out there as kind of boldly as we can. We recognize that some of those metrics that are kind of vanity metrics or things that we evaluate those channels on historically may not perform in that way, but it creates content that's shareable. Our sellers are able to use it in the sales cycle. Our client success consultants, our account managers in a way, they they're taking that content that we're using in the marketing funnel and they're sharing it with our actual clients, and it creates more of that back end of the the revenue flywheel for referrals and all of those pieces. And so for us, we have thought like, hey, if we're gonna put the effort in it, put 10 more percent effort into it to make it really great, it can be used at every stage, and then we can use it across all of our channels. We can use it in email, all these things, version it so it's make one thing once, version it 100 ways. But what I see when I go to these marketing conferences or I take these webinars or whatever it is, it's all like speed to execution, just get it done.
Right.
It doesn't matter how good it is. And I'm like, no, there's got to be a way to do both. You can move fast and you can put out really great work. And when you do that, I really think then it transcends your channels. And our metrics don't always look the way that I want them to, but I know the content is shareable and usable, and you see it in the sales cycle. Right now, the amount of our kind of leads that are turning into opportunities is really amazing. They're just not closing yet. Just like, I don't know about y'all, how many purchases do you have that you haven't made yet? Because you're just like, oh, I'll just wait and see. And I think it's what we're seeing as well.
Yeah. I've got a couple of those emails in my inbox, I think, some today. But no, I love that philosophy and perspective, because it's all about creating value and being like ruthless in value creation across the market, across marketing and performance. And I think that that's something that is is courageous, honestly, because I think oftentimes it's definitely not the easier path to do. That's it takes more effort, right? You're talking at least 10% more effort, but I would argue it's also it could be inconvenient, because that also means generally a little bit more time. But I commend you for doing it, because I do think that it pays dividends. Maybe even if it's planting seeds and not necessarily seeing the results right away, I think with water it'll grow, which I think is really, really cool to hear. Because again, I think that is something that we see a lot, especially in some of the more enterprise-oriented spaces that we've worked in. Is there's a lot of follow the leader. There's a lot of kind of blind following the blind. A lot of white papers getting duped by every other company that are just like a little bit off the first one. Like a lot of that type of stuff. Which again, if you're inherently connected to like, is this creating value? It kind of it's hard to copycat at that point, right? You can see what people are doing in the space, but you have to be true to your audience and your customers and the folks that you're doing business with. So I'm inspired by that, because I think it's a good reminder that that's something we can all ascribe to on a daily basis.
Yeah, I think especially in the B2B space. I mean, I don't know how many emails you were getting every day that you can tell scraped something off of your social media.
Oh yeah.
I have a joke on one of mine that said I had
Too many.
I had 1 million Zanga followers. Y'all remember Zanga way back in the day? And obviously, I don't even think there were 1 million users. And I got an email yesterday from some SDR that's like, congratulations, I understand the influence you have because of the 1 million Zanga followers you had. And while it made me read the email, it also made me, recognize fully like, oh gosh, this just didn't take the extra 10% to make sure it works. And I just would rather, I'd rather set the speed. I'd rather like set the standard than just like follow every trend. I don't, there are ways to do both. I just truly believe there are third alternatives. You don't have to do one or the other. There's a way to find a way to do that. And, tying it very back to where we started, if you allow your team to make content they're proud of, they're going to lean in better. And when your team is leaned in better, you're going to have better performance. And that's just what I think we've done. I've really seen over the last several years is just like our team is proud of the work they do because we give them the opportunity to do it. And because of that, we see it in our results pretty regularly.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think the other thing, maybe just another lens on what you were saying around kind of great content creates value for customers, meaning like, even in times like this, they're willing to transact on that. I think the other aspect of that great content is also brand building. Like if we believe that brand is the relationship between a company and culture, or a company and its consumers, like that's dynamic, that's ever changing, and it's long term. Probably all read the long and the short of it, but like there is this kind of long term tail on our activities, especially in times right now. So I think like making sure that we can't be transactional 100% of the time, that we have that long view. And I feel like we've seen the brands that are leaning in during these
Yep.
downtimes are winning. You have to be willing to go there. And I think the thing that we're pushing is, and it sounds like you are, is like creativity is kind of that value hacker in terms of being able to elevate brand perception, stand out from the noise, as well as like be able to elevate utility in or perceived utility, so you don't have to continue to do the like price
Right.
discounting or like ramp like even more transactional content out there in the world. Like you can actually show up in a unique way, create value for people.
The LTV just isn't there on transactional engagements, especially I believe in like the B2B
Hmm.
space. We serve small and medium sized businesses, and so like you know, a lot of times our services are a sacrifice for them. It is a investment into the future and scaling for them. Anybody who's delegated to an
Hmm.
assistant or outsourced your accounting, you know, if you know a marketing assistant, I feel like so many of our marketing assistants serve agencies to help them serve their client, creates kind of a scalable way to fractionally grow, or you know, if you're having to let people go in this season, it's another way to kind of supplement those pieces. But I do think that the big part of that though is like they they are sacrificing something to engage with you, but they have to believe that you believe it. And I think the
Right.
brands that are leaning in creatively and they really are like adding value now, what you perceive from them is, oh, they really believe in what they're doing. You all know, and I could name kind of 3 top brands right now because you hear from one of their kind of SDRs or your account manager there or whatever it is every day, and you're like, man, you were just at this other place the other day, and then you were at this there. I've heard from you 3 times in the last 2 years at 3 different places, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I don't believe that they believe in the solution they're selling. And maybe that is different at the enterprise level B2B and it's just all transactional. I don't know. That's not where I lead. Where I lead is in the kind of small, medium-sized business. And I've just found that like, gosh, our marketers, our team on our marketing team has to believe that the solution we are
Yep.
selling can help transform businesses,
Yep.
therefore transform communities and people's lives and all these other pieces. And I've just seen it. I've seen leaders get the help they needed that they didn't think they could afford, but they can get now because it's fractional and they can grow. And I'm not just trying to sell. Sorry, I really got
No,
into my brand positioning speech there,
I love
no,
but
it.
I love it.
I believe it, and I believe it can help leaders. I believe it can help agencies. It can believe, you know, any marketing team anywhere, whoever's watching here today. There are ways that you can scale, grow, and do really good work you're proud of. And when you do that, people lean in, and that's the part that like when you then present up into a C-suite or to owners or to whatever it might be, where they're just looking at results only. The soul there, how do you scale with soul? Was something I heard a business consultant say a few years ago, and I like really loved that because like if that when you lose that is when it no longer connects.
Yeah. Yeah. Regardless,
Yeah.
regardless of size of an organization, we always talk about it's all business to people, and human beings are in relationship with human beings, not with corporations. We love brands, and all those things are incredibly important, but at the end of the day, we have experiences with humans, and so like there is an aspect of like that still remains true, which means that as marketers, as creatives, it's always important that we're keeping that front and center in how we're communicating, how we're articulating value, and also creating it. Because like if it's just purely a transaction to the point of the 100+ AI written sales emails I get a day, it's never, you're not going to break through and create value in someone's life if that's the amount of time they're like throw spaghetti at the wall. Like, and sure, people would still argue for it, but like I think your strategy and what you're talking about is what we're seeing winning to it, even at enterprise level. Like people that are actually taking the time to figure that out are the ones that are solving for some of the challenges that face the market right now.
Just in case my boss is
Yeah.
watching, I just want to make sure, like, I do believe you can do both. Like,
Yeah.
there is a way to,
Oh yeah,
there is a,
for sure. Yeah.
it's not one or
Yes.
the other. Though my
No,
CEO knows that I do think it's a lot of this is the end of us, but that, not like creatives, but just all of us. But I
totally.
think that, she always challenges me. She's like, but what if you use it for good? You could be the one, which is great inspirational leadership, right? But I do think there's a way to do both, and I think too often we
Mhm.
settle for a binary one or the other. The third
Yeah.
alternative, there is a way to scale, there is a way to use these tools to grow, But if you are not valuing the customer's time or the prospect's time, you're just trying to convert, it doesn't work. That's when it definitely doesn't work. We all see that every day.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a constant. I mean, that's the constant wrestling match that leaders are going to be required to lean into, not away, like hide from. Is how it's all going to play together, and how do we? Yeah, I think there's that Dan and Chip Heath decision. Was it Decisions, or I can't remember the book about decision making and how there's more than one door, two doors, and how oftentimes we are, go to the lowest common denominator of 13-year-old brain of like yes or no being the only two options, when in reality there's 1,000, and it takes creativity to find the ones that make sense for whatever the problem is we're trying to solve.
For sure. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap up. I feel like, especially now when it's so easy for everyone to do the majority of the things that we were talking about, like what you said about believing in what you're doing and authenticity is so true, and being about people. And I feel like whatever scale you're working at, like that's something that people can take away. So just really appreciate that. I feel like I see Jason in the comments, scale with soul will be a takeaway. And I just really appreciate your time. We're super excited for people to take away some nuggets from this episode.
Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate it, man. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having me. This was a blast, guys.
Yeah. Cheers, man.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.